Pretend you're going to the bathroom and escape. Under the table, he poked my leg with his phone, quietly letting me check the screen. It seems my brother wants to get me out of here. After being married for 3 years, I finally introduced my brother to my husband. However, within 2 seconds of meeting him, my brother's expression darkened, and he rudely began gobbling up the snacks in front of him, ignoring the conversation. That's a tasty-looking sponge cake. Why don't you head to the bathroom for a sec? What are you planning to do with my sponge cake? It didn't seem like one would be enough since I was a bit peckish. Can we talk after I eat this? My brother is a detective, and he's not one to act pointlessly during such times. There must be some intent behind his actions, but I couldn't understand it. For the time being, I struggled with what to do in the bathroom. After thinking it over, I decided not to run and returned to the living room. Sitting next to my brother, his eyes angrily questioned, "Why did you come back?" I had taken precautions, so I wished he wouldn't be so upset. The precautions seemed to have worked because soon after, the doorbell rang. Checking the monitor, I finally understood my brother's intent. It seems my husband is a terrible villain. Given the current situation, he's gonna fall to the depths of hell. My name is Michelle. I'm 35 years old and work in sales. I married Sam 3 years ago, and we don't have any kids yet. I also have a brother named Ken, who I haven't seen in a while. It's not because he ran away or anything, it's just because of his job. Ken works as a police officer on a small island. Usually, a police office is staffed by several officers working in shifts around the clock, but apparently, Ken is the only full-time officer on the island. Because of this, he rarely comes home. Ken became a police partly because our father was one, but also because he had a strong sense of justice from a young age. When I was in the 3rd year of junior high school and Ken was in his 1st year, we once saw a man shoplifting bread and drinks at a supermarket. Oh, he put it in his clothes. I'm gonna call him out. Wait. Didn't Dad say that you catch shoplifters after they leave the store without paying? Otherwise, they could just say they were going to pay at the register. Ken was about to confront the shoplifter, but I grabbed his arm and stopped him. I felt like a store detective, ready to catch the thief like a cop. Ken felt the same, getting all excited and breathing heavily. As we watched without being noticed, the man walked past the register and out of the store. We ran after him. Excuse me. What? We caught up to him a bit away from the store, and Ken called out to him from behind. The man stopped and turned to face us. That's when I realized how dangerous what we were doing was. Up close, the man was more intimidating than I had thought, and I started to worry, can we really handle this by ourselves? My feelings of being a store detective or a cop vanished, and I just became a trembling junior high schooler. What's the name of the nearest station, and how do I get there? Oh, why don't you go to the bathroom? Don't embarrass me in front of people. Okay, I'll go. Ken saved me with his quick thinking. And I pretended to walk slowly towards the store's bathroom. Inside, I reported the situation to the store staff. One male employee went to where Ken was, while another listened to me and quickly checked the surveillance footage. Just as I described, the camera clearly showed the man stealing and not paying at the register. Once confirmed, I went back with the male employee to where Ken was. When we arrived, the thief was shouting loudly. It seemed he realized he was caught when the employee arrived and started resisting. The camera caught you shoplifting. Can we talk in the office? Hearing about the evidence, the shoplifter gave up and followed the employee back to the store. Later, the staff thanked us, but I don't know what happened to the thief. On our way home, Ken apologized. Sorry. That was dangerous. If the employee hadn't come, we might have been beaten and the thief would have escaped. It was my fault for playing detective. I wasn't thinking. I'm sorry. We walked home in silence. That night, our father scolded us severely. In situations like this, call an adult or the police. You don't know what criminals might do. Don't do anything dangerous again. Ken and I were listening to our father's harsh but just words. I secretly believe this incident inspired Ken to become a police officer. He probably wanted to catch bad guys himself. Ken's strong sense of justice also means he can't ignore people in trouble. Wow, people live on such small islands. If they struggle without doctors, they probably struggle without police too. One day, Ken was watching a documentary about a doctor who moved to a remote island to help the people there. Inspired by this, junior high schooler Ken set his goal to become the island's police. Ken achieved his goal and now works at a police office on a remote island. He takes pride in his job. But his dedication to work sometimes means neglecting family. I can't leave the island in case something happens, he said, so he stopped coming home, and we only got occasional calls. I think it's been 5 or 6 years since I've seen him. However, my parents and I are proud of him working for others, so we accept it. I just wished he could have come to my wedding. I got married 3 years ago. It was an ordinary meeting through mutual friends. But my husband is serious and an excellent salesperson. He's already being given significant responsibilities and is expected to have a bright future. I also work in sales, but I'm nowhere near as good as him. I wanted to brag to Ken about my wonderful husband, but since he couldn't come to the wedding, I just sent him photos. Normally, I'd be mad at Ken for missing my wedding, but he had a good reason. The day before the wedding, a drunken assault suspect fled to the island where Ken works. So, he couldn't leave the island. Later, the suspect was caught, and Ken called to apologize. "I'm sorry. I was gonna come, but I just couldn't leave the island." "It's okay. You don't come home often, but you'll visit eventually, right? I'll introduce you to my husband then. Or maybe we could visit you on the island." "Oh, please don't. I don't want to interrupt your newlywed life, and if you bring him here, he might complain about how remote this place is." He wouldn't say that. In the end, Ken refused my offer to visit, and we agreed that he would meet my husband sometime. I decided to enjoy my newlywed life, taking Ken's words to heart. However, married life gradually turned out to be different from what I had imagined. When I started living with my husband, I expected a sweet newlywed life. But my husband prioritized work, and our life was different from what I had imagined. "I'll go to bed first. Good night." Leaving my husband reading in the living room, I went to the bedroom alone. After coming home, my husband ate dinner, took a shower, and then worked on reports or read business books until late at night. During these times, he had an aura that said, "Don't talk to me." It was like an invisible wall surrounded him. On weekends, he would go out for dinner with clients or play futsal or golf early in the morning. When he went fishing, he'd leave early in the morning and come back late at night. Meeting people outside work helps build trust quickly. You should do it too, since you're in sales. The trick is not to talk about work. I understood that my husband's success at work was due to his efforts. He worked and studied late into the night, even using holidays to work. During long holidays, he was happy to have uninterrupted study time. Because of this, I wanted to visit my family with him, but we couldn't go at all. Working hard is good. I've heard about wives who struggle because their husbands don't work. Compared to their problems, my issue of my husband being too focused on work seems luxurious. But as a newlywed, I wanted him to spend a little more time with me. Since we're married, I want kids, but my husband says it would affect his work, so we still use contraception. When I bring up kids, he makes it seem like I'm needy and begging. Also, because he's always tired from work, he's very mechanical and brief when we're intimate. I often wonder, looking at my ring, are we really married? My husband seems to be the type who doesn't care for his wife after marriage. Before marriage, I thought he was kind, but my impression changed significantly after we got married. The newlywed period is now, and I'm slowly building up frustrations about my husband. However, since he's just working hard, I don't want to be the annoying wife who says, "What's more important, your job or me?" So, I subtly tried to check if he still cared about me. There's been some groping incidents around here. Should I be careful on my way home? You're over 30, so you don't need to worry. His words made me anxious. I decided to be more straightforward about my feelings. You always work even when you get home. Won't your body give out? Sometimes, I think we should have more of a married life since we're newlyweds. I'm in my mid-30s and will be in my 40s soon. Now's the time to push myself at work. I will definitely become the head of sales. I want to lead the sales department and make it thrive, not just be a cog in the machine. Sales is directly tied to the company's profits, but sometimes it's seen as a job anyone can do. Sure, engineers, lawyers, and doctors do specialized jobs, but I hate that sales are looked down upon. My usually quiet husband became talkative. It seemed we were on different levels in our work. I couldn't argue, so I started to think that supporting my husband was the right thing to do. At home, I stopped talking to him to help him focus. When he left early for fishing or golf, I woke up at 4 a.m. to make breakfast and prepare. After a year of supporting his work, this is the result. Hey, is dinner ready? Make sure it's ready when I get home. Sorry, I got home a bit late from work today. You don't do important work. You're late because you're not good enough. Try harder. It's just a busy season. People who can't do their job always blame others. If work is making it hard for you to do housework, then quit. We don't have kids yet, so my income alone is enough to support us. My husband had become very domineering. He would get angry if dinner wasn't ready when he got home. If I took a shower or went to bed before he got home, he would get angry. No matter how early he got up for fishing or golf, if I didn't get up first to make breakfast, he would get angry. He looks down on me, saying, "You're not good at your job," even though he's not my boss and has never seen my work. Sure, compared to my talented and hardworking husband, I might not be as good at my job. But I think I'm doing my best and have average abilities. If you want to argue, show results at work. When he said this, I started feeling inferior to him and couldn't say anything back. If anyone saw my pitiful state, they'd probably say, "This is abuse. You should stand up for yourself." Or, "I couldn't endure this," and would get a divorce. But my husband isn't always cruel. He can be kind too. Welcome home. You're back early today. Yeah. Today's fishing trip wasn't too far. Look, I caught a rockfish. You haven't started dinner yet, right? I'll do it. You should rest for a change. My husband opened the fridge to check what he could cook besides fish. Tonight, I just had to sit on the sofa and wait for dinner to be ready. Sometimes, when he does these kind things, I can't bring myself to hate him. Watching my husband in his kind mode, I thought, he's just strict about work. And it's weird for me to complain when he's just working hard. A year passed, and our second year of marriage ended. We entered our third year of married life. One day, when my husband went out as usual and I was alone at home, I sat on the sofa and reflected on our 2 years and a bit of marriage. Strangely, I had no memories. All I could think of was myself working while doing housework for my husband. As good memories, I can barely recall our wedding, honeymoon, and my excitement when we moved into this house and started our newlywed life. Despite my growing dissatisfaction with my husband, I thought, this is unavoidable and I should endure it, covering up the unpleasantness. Realizing this, I became disenchanted with my husband. But since we were married, it wasn't a simple goodbye. I decided not to rush to a conclusion and to start by facing my feelings and my husband. I began to seriously think about the future, feeling like I was coming back to myself. The next day, out of the blue, my brother Ken called me after a long time. "Ken, long time no see. It's been like 100 years. It's been a bit over 2 years. Actually, I'm coming back home." Coming back? Leaving the island? Yeah. A new officer is coming, so I'm coming back. Also, I'm moving from the regional section to the detective division. Really? So, you'll be a detective like Dad? Well, I'll probably start with a lot of menial tasks. And since I'm coming back, introduce me to your husband. My husband. Right. As I was thinking about my husband, my mixed feelings spilled over the phone. Not right away. I'll be busy with work for a while after I get back, so it'll be a bit later. That's not the issue. What's wrong? Did something happen? I explained to Ken about my 2 years of married life, confirming my current situation and feelings. I hadn't talked to anyone about my marital problems, so I was surprised at how easily my complaints about my husband, like being looked down on at work and his domineering attitude, flowed out. After listening to me, Ken gave very police-like advice. Isn't that emotional abuse? I thought you'd say that. But he's kind sometimes. That's typical for abusers. They use a mix of kindness and cruelty to control their victims. But every time Ken gave advice, I countered with but. I was probably already in the brainwashed state Ken mentioned. Even understanding that, my buts wouldn't stop. Ultimately, it's up to you. If you don't want to leave, that's your choice. After talking about my husband with Ken, he gave me an extreme conclusion. I regretted my constant buts. But thinking it over, I realized I didn't need to decide everything right now. Meet my husband once. Then we can talk again. Got it. Ken replied a bit reluctantly. I felt bad for being such a troublesome sister. That night, I told my husband about Ken coming over. My brother's coming over soon. We've been married for 3 years, but they've never met. Your brother's a cop like your dad, right? Yes. And he's about to become a detective. Is it okay if he comes here? Or would you prefer to meet outside? No, home is fine. When's he coming? He said he'd be busy for a while after he gets back, so probably over a month from now. My husband seemed nervous about meeting Ken for the first time. I also felt a bit nervous, like during our wedding greetings. A month later, Ken came over. This is my husband, Sam. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. Sorry for the late introduction. I led Ken to the living room, and my husband stood up from the sofa to greet him. Ken's expression darkened when he saw Sam and froze for a moment. I panicked, thinking Ken judged Sam as a bad guy in 2 seconds. But another 2 seconds later, Ken's expression was filled with the same sense of justice he had when he confronted the shoplifter in junior high school. Despite my concern about Ken's reaction, I guided him to the living room table. Ken sat next to me, with Sam across from us. I had prepared coffee and snacks for everyone. That sponge cake looks delicious. Why don't you go to the bathroom for a bit? What are you planning to do with my sponge cake? One won't be enough since I'm a bit peckish. Can we talk after I eat this? Sorry. He loves sponge cake. I prepared it for him, but it seems it was a mistake. Better that he's not a difficult person. Ken smiled innocently like a child, prioritizing the sponge cake over conversation with my husband. I thought it was rude to act like this, even if the other person was family. But I also wondered, Ken wasn't this impolite. There must have been some intent behind Ken's words. But as I couldn't understand it, I tilted my head more and more. Ken glanced at me and quickly typed a message on his phone under the table. When he finished, he poked my leg with his phone to show me the message secretly. Pretend you're going to the bathroom and escape. It seemed Ken wanted me to leave. I understood his intention but not the reason. However, I knew Ken wasn't the type to act without reason. You made me really need to go to the bathroom, I said and left the living room. I headed to the bathroom, thinking about what Ken wanted me to do and whether I should leave the house. Does he think I'm in danger? Does that mean Sam is dangerous? But if Sam is dangerous, is it okay to leave Ken alone with him? If Ken wants to talk to Sam, shouldn't I, who knows Sam well, be there? Despite Ken telling me to escape, I decided to return to the living room. That took a while. It's rude to keep your brother waiting. Isn't it more rude that Ken started eating the sponge cake out of nowhere? And Sam, it's not good to say that a woman takes too long in the bathroom. When I returned to the living room, Ken gave me a shocked look. Sitting next to him again, he glared at me as if to say, "Why did you come back?" I had a backup plan, so I hoped he wouldn't be too angry. Besides, if he kept that expression, Sam might suspect something. "Your phone is ringing." "Huh? Oh, I'll step outside for a moment." As Ken's phone rang at just the right moment, I used it to create a flow to get him out of the living room. A brief break should help him regain his composure. "I'm really sorry about my rude brother. I thought he'd be more serious since he's a policeman." Just because he's a policeman doesn't mean he's always serious in private. I kept the conversation light until Ken returned, looking calmer. He seemed to have regained his composure. "We once caught a shoplifter together. Handling that as junior high schoolers is impressive." Even after Ken returned, the casual conversation continued. It was surprisingly normal chit-chat. "Remember how Dad scolded us both that time?" Since Ken continued the small talk, I joined in. But not knowing Ken's intentions made me uneasy about whether this was the right approach. Minutes passed without incident, increasing my anxiety. Then, the doorbell rang suddenly. Checking the monitor, I finally understood Ken's plan. Seeing my face, Ken gave me a signal. "It looks like they've arrived. Let's go together." "Huh? Come on, I have some things I want to check too." Sam looked puzzled but followed us to the entrance. "Who are you?" When Sam opened the door, he looked even more confused. 2 men and a car were outside. I had a hunch about who the men were. "Aren't these men detectives?" "Detectives? But they aren't in uniform." Detectives often wear plain clothes, unlike regular officers. "Oh, really? But why are they here?" Revealing the men as detectives made Sam's confusion turn to anxiety. He seemed to be sweating a little. While I didn't know their exact purpose, I could explain why they were here. I called the police. Ken told me to pretend to go to the bathroom and escape, so I thought it was an emergency. "I was surprised when you came back. I was planning to talk to Sam after you left. He might have gotten violent." How could I read that much into pretend to go to the bathroom and escape? That's why I called the police. Dad always said to contact the police or an adult in an emergency. Then the police called me to confirm, and I asked for backup. So, that call was from the police. Ken and I solved one question at a time. But the biggest question remained. Just as I was about to ask, Sam, who felt left out, interrupted. "Don't just agree among yourselves. How did you know I was a criminal?" I had suspected something was wrong with Sam when the detectives arrived. But the question was, what did he do? I stayed silent to hear Ken and Sam's conversation. "I recently returned to this area, so I'm catching up on the local cases. One of the cases involves a serial sex offender. There were 2 locations where the incidents occurred. One is a little distance from this house, and the other is near where Sam lived before he got married. I learned about Sam's previous residence from a phone call with my sister. Strangely, the sex crimes near his old place stopped completely around the time Sam got married and moved." "Sex crimes? No way!" I felt a chill hearing this unexpected answer. "It could just be a coincidence." The composite sketch created from the victims' testimonies looks exactly like Sam. Not only that, but the physical characteristics match perfectly as well. I had received photos from our wedding, but they were over 2 years old, so I didn't notice at first. But the moment I saw Sam's face in person, it clicked. You really need to see someone in person to recognize these things. I sent the wedding photos you gave me to my colleagues at the police station. Seeing those photos made them decide quickly that we needed to question him, which is why the detectives came over right away. "Am I getting arrested?" "It's not certain yet. We'll question you at the station and see." With 3 detectives present, Sam realized resistance was futile and went with them quietly. "I'm sorry for this sudden trouble. As a detective, I couldn't ignore it. I understand. Ken, you're separating me from a husband who committed sex crimes." Usually, a wife should believe in her husband's innocence. But with my father and brother as policemen, I knew what it meant when the police took someone away. I still had many questions, but I knew more would be revealed in time. I took Ken inside to explain what would happen next. The next day, I was informed that Sam was arrested. My husband would go out for dinners at night or head out early in the morning for fishing or golf to build relationships with clients. He had been pretending to meet clients for meals, fishing, or golf but was actually committing sex crimes. He exposed himself to women late at night or groped schoolgirls. In addition to this, he also committed other acts I don't even want to mention, and he was charged with breaking and entering. There were over 30 known victims, with likely more undiscovered. I couldn't believe the local groper was my husband. His indifferent behavior towards me was because he was satisfying his urges elsewhere. Avoiding my family and his reaction to Ken's visit now made sense. But Sam was also a hard worker who achieved results. Even though it was embarrassing, I had to ask Ken why Sam committed these crimes. Sex crimes aren't always about sexual desire. Some do it to satisfy a need for control. Control? He wanted to be in charge at work and did domineering at home. Is there a connection? Causing suffering makes them feel in control. They don't feel guilty because they don't see it as causing harm, making them repeat the crimes. They're hurting the victims terribly. People like us see it that way. But some don't. They think, at least I'm not hitting anyone. They see getting away with it as an achievement. So, it's more about the thrill than sexual satisfaction. I've heard shoplifters do it for the thrill, not the items. Criminal psychology is complex. The thrill can become addictive, increasing the frequency of crimes. I can't believe he did this. Exactly. People with a strong desire for control often have high abilities or leadership roles that allow them to manage others effectively. They are seen as competent and serious by those around them. So, when they get caught, it's common for people to say, "I can't believe someone like them would do such a thing." Listening to Ken, I realized I was reacting just like a textbook case. After his arrest, Sam made settlements with the victims to reduce his sentence. But Ken said, given the number of cases, he would still face jail time. The settlement amounts ranged from $4,000 to $6,000 per victim, and there were over 30 known victims. Sam would likely go to prison and lose all his money. I'm preparing for a divorce, which can proceed even during his imprisonment. This marriage taught me I have poor judgment in men. So, I'll focus on my career and avoid relationships for now.